to see you and welcome you to our second webinar with renowned world language specialist and consultant Leslie Grahn. And she's going to share her expertise with advancing proficiency. But before that, I would like to introduce the Indiana team. And also I have to excuse our dear colleague Teresa Nichols. She won't be with us today, but we have the rest of the team. Chan Mei Wan, who is the first vice president for the Indiana Foreign Language Teachers Association, Volta, and also in the executive board member, we have our colleague Jason. They will be in charge of your questions on the chat, but also we have our conference in fall. And for that, I will give the floor to Chan Mei Wan, who is the conference chair and who has all the magnificent information.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chu Mei Guan. I'm the conference chair this year for IFTA. We have very fabulous keynote speaker, Martina Bax. She will be with us this fall. And we are accepting the proposal. The due date is August the 1st. And I will post the information on Chen 老师好, 方老师好. So I will post the information on the chat. And if you like, you can download the free app, that's Yap. So you can see almost most of the information about our fall conference. Okay, thank you. Thank you again.
Right, and once again, for the call for papers, Sean May.
Yeah, we'll call for the paper. The due date will be on August 1st.
Correct. So as Sean May mentioned, in November, different venue. Please remember that if you are in Indiana, remember that we have moved to a different hotel this year, and also remember that we have the different events. We have the mentoring. We have the new and beginning teachers workshop. So my other colleague in this team is Jason, who is going to share about the logistics, about how to send questions to Leslie and other guidelines, housekeeping things.
Sure. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Before I give the floor to Leslie Grahn, our popular speaker today, there's something please bear in mind. First one, you are unmuted. So in order to get all the PD goes fluently. And second, if you have any questions, please type your questions in the chat box, and at the end of the Zoom meeting, we will answer that. Leslie will answer that at the end of the Zoom meeting. And for the certificate for participation, if you registered with a link from Indiana Roadmap, you should get the certificate several weeks after the PD is done. To the YouTube recordings, we will post it after we do a final editing. So please be patient. Now I think we are ready. Leslie, would you please start our presentation?
But before that, yeah, thank you, Jason. Before presenting some credentials from Leslie, when we're not here, just to announce that next Monday will be our last webinar with Marta Nikos. That will be at the same time, 4 p.m. And this is also an interesting topic because it's encouraging the students to participate and use the target language in remote and in-person world language classroom. So don't forget, we still have one more webinar on Monday. And this is brought to you by the Indiana Foreign Language Teachers Association and also the Indiana Language Roadmap, along with Hamilton Lugar School at Indiana University. So now is the time to introduce our magnificent presenter. You have seen her in many venues, places, conferences. She is a national and international a world language consultant, also board member of ACFL, NACFU, and also the NEP, that is the regional organization for world languages in the East. Also, Leslie is the chair for the professional development in ACFO, and many other credentials. So let's give time for her presentation. And thank you, Leslie, for this second webinar. And thank you for sharing your expertise with teachers from Indiana and also from parts of the country.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everybody. So happy you're here to spend time with us today. Thank you for taking an hour out of your life to do some professional learning with us today. All right, so as my friends have shared, I'm Leslie Grahn. I have 27 years of experience teaching in the middle and high school level. I taught French and Spanish, and then for the last 12 years of my career, I was in the central office. The last job I held there was as the coordinator of world languages in Howard County, Maryland, which is where I'm coming to you from right now. There I supervised 200 world language teachers, pre-K 12, 8 languages. So to give you kind of my context. And I retired in 2017, and now I do things like this because it brings me joy and makes me happy. And as long as those things are true, I'm going to keep doing them. And so I love spending time with educators like you. So thank you so much for joining me today. So our topic for today in our short time together is going to be about advancing proficiency in world languages. So the whole idea about how do we move students, how do we guide them along the proficiency continuum, how do we keep our focus on proficiency? So I'm going to give you some big ideas today in our time together for us to focus in on in order for us to be moving forward with proficiency. On this slide, you'll see my website, grandforlang.com. I'm going to refer to links there. If you want to tweet about today or you want to find me on Twitter, it's also Grahn4Lang. And on Pinterest, I'm also listed by my name and also Grahn4Lang. So when I retired, I tried to make everything nice and lined up so that I'm easy to find out there on the web. So that's what my website looks like. And obviously, because our topic today is proficiency, I have a page called Proficiency that you can kind of see at the bottom there, that first blue button on the bottom left. And that's where you're going to find lots of the resources we're talking about today. I'm also going to talk about target language, which there's a page on that. And I'm going to talk about the communicative modes, which there's a page on those too. And so lots and lots of resources. We're not going to be able to explore all of them today, but I'll have you get used to how to find them. Okay, and that's what my boards look like. So far, I have close to 200. Again, there's one on proficiency on there that we'll be taking a look at. And also lots of other things that are thematically organized by language, topic, pedagogical topics, things like that. So I encourage you to go back to the Pinterest boards after our time together and check them out for even more information. So here's the important part. I want you to make sure you have this link. This link has our resources for today. And that's what I love about Google Drive. I can go back in and add things if I want to. So you'll see there's 2 green pages in there. And then on the left, you'll see there's a document that has links on it. And that's where you can go to find links that I refer to in our session together that you may not have grabbed or saved. You can go back to this page, right? And so this is a place where we're going to keep it. Also, at the end of our presentation, I'll put a PDF of our presentation, the PowerPoint, in this folder sometime this evening, that if you need to revisit some of the slides, you are welcome to do that. Okay, so here are our lofty goals for our little bit of time together this afternoon. We're going to deepen our understanding of the proficiency levels. We're going to gain strategies for student ownership of proficiency. We're going to think about how we can assess our teacher and student target language use. And we're also going to be able to plan for providing practice to our students in all 3 modes. Now, as I said, that's pretty lofty because we have less than an hour together. So let's see how we do. So I always like to start out with a social emotional type check-in. And so my check-in today is, what are you celebrating today? And so I'd love for you to share for me what you're celebrating in the chat. Summertime, yay! Grateful for my presentation. Thank you, Elena, you're so sweet. No more flooding in the garage. Oh my goodness, ice cream, new colleagues, nice weather. First social mixer since COVID, yay. Join the workshop. You guys are going so fast. Attending a great PD, thank you. New hairstyle, all right. Went to bed before midnight, I love that. Lots of summer, reconnecting with friends. I get to do that tomorrow at dinner. It's awesome. No more haze from the wildfires. Oh my goodness. Patio lunch with a friend. Awesome, awesome. So I want us to remember that, yes, we're here to do work and to think, but we also want to pay attention to our social emotional side and our well-being, to know that we care about how each other are doing, right? And so to make sure we take time to do that with our colleagues and also with our. So as I shared in our goals for our time together, I want to start out by deepening our understanding of proficiency. So we're saying that we're teaching with a proficiency focus now. We're focused on the world readiness standards for learning languages from ACTFL. We tend to look at that first row as the focus of teaching students to use the language communicatively, right? In the 3 modes: interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. And then we know ACTFL provides for us kind of a roadmap of what it's like at the different proficiency levels, right? And so we have actual names for those. And we also know that lots is out there, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today, around what do those different levels look like, right? And so we know students start out the novice low level and actually move through the novice levels quite quickly. Then they hit intermediate low, and most students kind of stall out around intermediate mid. That might take them a little while to get out of, because I need enough content and practice and examples for that. And then I move on up through intermediate. Those of you who are interested, the College Board tells us students that score on the AP exam of 3 and above are scoring at approximately intermediate high and advanced low. We also, when we show this cone to our students, we need to tell them that their goal of distinguished is not realistic. Not even all native speakers are distinguished, right? And so we want to be careful. You know, students always say, well, I want to be that highest thing. And so we want to make sure we're describing these correctly to our. And so many of us use this as a guide, the necessful, actful, can-do statements. We use these to help us define what students look like in the various modes at the various proficiency levels. And so when we're designing tasks, when we're designing rubrics, when we're thinking about growth, we need to know, well, what are the characteristics of a learner at novice low, novice mid, novice high, intermediate low? So we need to make sure we know what we're talking about before we try to help students know what the proficiency levels are about. And so many of us have established expected proficiency levels for the ends of our courses. So this is just a typical one that's out there, where by the end of level 1, all students are going to at least be at novice mid. At the end of level 2, all students are going to be at least at novice high or further, etc. And so many people have set these up so that we have course goals for each of our courses. We're saying, well, what am I hoping, where am I hoping my students' proficiency levels to be at the end of my course? And then many of us have taken those can-do statements and we've put them into the form of our own rubrics. And this happens to be a copy of the writing rubric from my district. And much of this language comes from the necessful, actful, can-do statements. And the whole idea here is, you'll notice that these rubrics are written from the student point of view, I can do this, I can do that. So it's not written in the third person where it says the student can, because that implies this is not for students. Students should know the rubrics too, right? Students should know what it looks like to be at the next proficiency level up. And that's why many of us talk about leveling up all the time, right? And so that's where wherever a student is, well, how can I design my lesson tasks so that they can level up to the next level? So we're always thinking about how can I challenge students to get to that next level of proficiency. And so one of the ways we can deepen our knowledge about the proficiency levels is to actually dig into them. And so there's a whole page on my website on proficiency. There's a whole board on my Pinterest called Proficiency Tools, but I'm going to ask my moderators to put this link into the chat. And what I'm going to have you do for a couple minutes is you're going to go to this Google Drive folder. So take a look at the screen and you'll see that there's a separate folder for advanced low, intermediate high, intermediate low, intermediate mid, etc. So I want you to choose a proficiency level. You get to pick what proficiency level do you want to look at. I would suggest you want to look at a proficiency level that's the target for a course you teach. So if you teach level 2, you want to look at novice high or intermediate low, for example. And when you look at the materials inside these folders, I want you to gather the key ideas or the key words that come through for you that makes a novice low kid different from an intermediate low kid. Okay, so let me repeat. What you're going to do is you're going to go to this Google Drive folder, the link on the bottom, Prof Lev as in proficiency levels. And I want you to just choose one of the folders at the top. And I want you to look at the examples inside each folder. And I want you to grab the key ideas or the key words for that proficiency level. Now, I'm only going to give you a couple minutes to do that. So you need to peruse them pretty quickly. All right. Everybody good? Okay, go ahead and check those out. I'll give you like 2 minutes. You might want to have a piece of paper with you to write down some of the keywords or key ideas for yourself. About 30 more seconds. You're just skimming them to look for key words, key ideas. Okay, so here's what you're going to do with those keywords and ideas. And again, I'm going to ask my moderators if they'll help me out. I'm going to have you go to this Padlet link, and I want you to find the proficiency level you looked at, and I want you to put your key ideas underneath there, and I want us to see how many of us kind of match the same ideas. Okay, so it's a bit.ly link, Prof Lev key words, proficiency level key words. Okay, so take your keywords, find the column that goes with the proficiency level you looked at and write them into the onto the Padlet. So if you haven't used the Padlet before, go to the Padlet, double click on the background, and it will bring up a empty sticky note and you can type in there. So you want to put it underneath the column that goes with your particular proficiency level that you looked at. So I am going to go ahead to that board. And we may not have ideas for every level because it's possible not everybody looked at that level, right? But I want to know, what big ideas did you walk away with from that level? Fantastic. Love it. So what I want you thinking about as we're watching these populate is that if I don't know what the proficiency level looks like, how will I ever describe it to my students? And so this is an important activity for you to do with your teams, where we sit together and we say, well, we're saying that kids at the end of this course will be novice high. Well, let's dig into what novice high really looks like, because in some cases, we ask students to do things that are well above where they're supposed to be, and that's when they get super frustrated. So that's why I always tell people, anchor yourself in the proficiency level language to know whether the task I created is way too challenging or not challenging enough. And it's all because I'm looking at those descriptors that help me know what the different proficiency levels look like. So if this is something you've never done before with your team, that Google Drive folder I just had you go to, I'll leave it there. So it's not like it's going to go away. You certainly could go back there and do a similar activity with your teams. Thank you so much for sharing. Lots of fantastic ideas. Okay. Something else I highly recommend is if you have proficiency-based rubrics, because today's not about assessment, but I wanted to do a quick aside here. If you have proficiency-based rubrics, a really good idea is every once in a while with your team, you want to do rubric calibration. And that's where you bring a student's work to the table. We all use the rubric together and we agree on at what proficiency level is this student's work. That is so that we're constantly calibrating. And if any of you all ever scored AP exams, you know that you're constantly calibrating when you're doing those. I think it's really important that we're doing it in our teams as well. Okay, so next I want to talk about, once we have a deep understanding of proficiency levels, how do we help our students to have a depth of understanding of proficiency? So one thing we need to do is talk with our students about what successful language learners do. What do good language learners do? So I made this poster. It's in the book, my book I co-authored for ACTFL. It's on my website. You can download it. I have elementary versions if you're interested. But the idea is that we want students to know that you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to understand everything you hear and read. You should be looking for patterns, not just translating every word, right? You should know where your resources are. Where are your tools? Oh, there's a word wall up on the wall. I'm going to use that, right? And so I want to empower students to understand what it feels like to be a language learner at their level, because they can speak their first language like a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 20-year-old, but they only can speak the second language they're learning down here is like a 5-year-old. So there's a tension that happens because I want to say these type of things, but I don't have the language yet to do that, right? And so we need them to understand that you're going to feel like you're talking like a baby initially, and that's okay because that's how you're going to grow. That's how you're going to advance in proficiency. So I'm going to show you some examples. A lot of these are from my teachers' classrooms in my district. So this is a poster that was outside one of my middle school level 1 Spanish teachers' rooms, and it says the path to proficiency starts here. And during the first week of school, she hangs from the ceiling, which I totally know might be in violation of the fire code. She hangs from the ceiling, novice low, novice mid, novice high, intermediate low. And then she walks the students around the classroom and they stand underneath novice low, and she says, pencil, notebook, crayon, backpack. That's what you're going to sound like initially. Then they move to novice mid and they stand under that sign. 2 notebooks, red pencil, brown backpack. So that starts getting into phrases. So the idea is that she helps them in English during the first week of school understand what they're going to initially sound like depending on at what proficiency level they're starting. So this will have everything. This was level 1. This would have everything to do with what level you teach. So it's helping visualize what proficiency looks like at the various levels. Here's another example of something my teacher do, and this resource is on my website and on my Pinterest load. You give them a card and the card tells them what to do. So the one on the left top, it says, describe it using only words. Try to think of the 10 most important words to describe it. There can be spelling errors and wrong words like a kid would make. Now, if you look over on the right, where she has the Pathway to Proficiency poster, and it says, what is your proficiency level? She took the things they wrote and they decided what level it was. Now, you're not gonna be able to see this real well, but you might be able to see that the novice low one is just a big list. She said, what's it like to be back in school? And this was middle school. So of course they said boring, homework, right? They said all kinds of negative things. But the idea is for them to get a feeling for what will my writing look like? What will my speaking sound like when I'm at this level? We also, you may be familiar with these posters. Many people have these in their classrooms. The one on the left is the one that most people call the ice cream poster. And this is for younger students because they don't understand what intermediate low means, but they do understand that I'm going to try to put as many scoops on my cone as I can. I'm going to start out only speaking in words and writing in words, then I'm going to go to lists and phrases, then sentences, then always sentences, connected sentences, right? And so the idea is how many scoops can you earn? On the right is the more kind of secondary version of it, where along the pathway, the labels of novice low, novice mid, novice high, and then little talk bubbles that says what you can do at those levels. Again, so important for students to be able to visualize what it's going to feel like to slowly work my way across the proficiency continuum. Here's an example from one of my other teachers' classrooms where she made it like a timeline on the wall, and again, put the various proficiency levels and then little talk bubbles over top that have examples of what they might sound like at that proficiency level. Here are 2 of my overachievers. This was middle school Spanish on the left, middle school French on the right. The one on the left, she had a bulletin board that said the path to proficiency, and they started out being caterpillars, and if they made it to the end, they became butterflies. You see that? And she moved them along the pathway based on how they were scoring on their proficiency assessments. Don't panic, no one's name was on those. They had some sort of code on there that the teacher knew who they were, but nobody else knew. So it's not like the kid back there at novice low is going to feel bad, right? But the idea was them to see visually how they were moving along the pathway. And on the right-hand side, that French teacher happened to have like a Finding Nemo theme that year. So you can see floating along to proficiency. Oh no, that was Spanish. And then she just had their starfish moving along. On the left here, you'll see that that's an organizer for a student to think about a writing or speaking task they were doing. But in the bottom left-hand corner, the teacher puts the icon of the ice cream cone. And that's constantly reminding the students, don't forget, you don't want to just talk in words. You want to talk in phrases and sentences and longer sentences, right? And then on the right is kind of nirvana, where this was one of my my middle school Spanish teachers. So this is level 1 kids. You can see they have the rubric there. They are giving each other peer feedback on how to improve their work. So that's how well those understood the rubrics and understood the proficiency levels. They were able to help each other know, oh, next time try to connect more of your sentences together. Next time try to put more description in. They were actually doing what the teacher typically has to do. They were giving feedback to each other. I will tell you that this is my favorite newest find. And if I don't have it linked in the, I'll make sure that I have it linked on the links page if I don't already. This actually was made by a school system in Utah to explain to dual language parents about how to know if their students were gaining in proficiency. But I will tell you, this is one of the best explanations of what proficiency looks like. They use the concept of crawling, walking, and running. And what does it look like to be a crawling mid? What does it look like to be a crawling high? And so they use that analogy that I think especially lay people who are not language educators like ourselves would better understand what all this stuff is about proficiency. So I highly encourage you to check that out. And then don't forget, we want students to be thinking about their own proficiency. So on the left-hand side, you may have seen typical things like this before. People call those can-do stamps. And so you put all the can-do statements from the unit on there, and the students color them in or get some kind of stamp from the teacher when they have accomplished them. And then on the right-hand side is what's called a proficiency tracker or self-assessment, where students use that graph to graph where they score on their proficiency assessments, and then they reflect on it, set goals for themselves for how they're going to get to the next level. And then don't forget that we want our feedback that we're giving students to be meaningful enough to help them move forward. So we no longer want to say, good job, right? Or just, yay, this is an intermediate low. But we want to say, want to make it an intermediate mid? Try doing this and this. So you'll see on my on the links page, I'll link you to some examples of feedback that we can give students. And this is an example from my district where, look at the bottom, if you scored novice high, then there's some ideas for improvement in the right-hand side to help them know what they could do to get to the next level. And so again, I want my feedback to help students to know how to get to the next level. So many of these things I just shared with you are on my Pinterest board called Proficiency Tools, and that is linked on our links page. And there's a page on my website called Proficiency. So it's teaching students about proficiency. So you'll see just from the top there, there's the ice cream cone and the pathway. So there's lots of resources there for you to access. So what I want you to think about right now is, what's your plan? So how are you going to increase your students' ownership of proficiency in the new school year? So how are you going to do that? Believe it or not, there's districts who their whole first pre-unit, meaning before unit 1, is a short week just teaching proficiency to kids so that they're sure they understand what we're about in terms of trying to grow in our proficiency in the language. So I want you just to stop for a second and reflect on the things I just shared with you. What might you put up in your room? What kinds of activities might you do with your students during the first year? I want you to set some goals for yourself right now, and you do not have to share them. These can be private, but I want you just to think about, how will I empower my students to know how to understand their proficiency level and what they need to do next level. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is target language use. And what we know is, if the teacher's using the target language and the students are using the target language, we have a higher probability of the students increasing their proficiency levels, right? And so we have seen these before. These are the core practices that came out from ACTFL. I know now they're being referred to as guiding principles. They're also referred to as high leverage teaching practices. But we know the number one thing on our list is target language use. And we know that we want to be using 90 to 100% target language in our classroom because that's how students will acquire language. What I love to say when I do workshops on target language use with teachers is if 90 to 100% target language was easy, we wouldn't be talking about it all the time. It is not easy because we are humans, we are not robots. And if we're pushed back against enough times, we sometimes give in. And so what I ask people to do is, how are you going to restart after that? And so think about how you can start again the next day to try to get back to that 90 to 100%. And so we know that this is based on research and that students need that significant level of interaction with the target language in order for them to gain language and cultural proficiency, right? And so this isn't something that was made up by ACTFL to torture us in any way. We know that this is how students are going to acquire language and grow across the proficiency continuum. So one of the things I highly recommend, because target language use is such a challenge for all of us, is to take a look at my page called Target Language on my website. And at the top are a whole bunch of articles about target language use. So you may know the one Going for 90 Plus is one of them, right? So there's many of them that have been from the Language Educator magazine, from various places. Well, I had my 12 high schools. Each of the teams in each of my high schools read some of those articles, and they created what we call our top 10 tips. And so they created infographics. They took the best ideas out of all those articles and they put them on these infographics. So somebody's done that work for you already. So what I'm hoping you can do is go onto my website, go to the one called Target Language. And again, this should be on your links page, and scroll down to the bottom to look at the tips. What I challenge you to do is take those tips and make your own top 10 list for the ways you're going to try to maintain the 90 to 100% starting the new school year. And so that's one of your tasks that I want you to follow up with, is take a look at those ideas and which ones will work for you best, right? Because we're all different. We have different teaching styles. We have different comfort levels. And so the ones that you think will help you the best, I encourage you to put them on a little card, like an index card, put it inside your planning book or something like that. Refer to it regularly. Now, when we're encouraging student target language use, there's lots of things people do. So one is called mystery student. So each day you select a student, the students do not know who it is, and you're paying attention to that student's target language use. And you can kind of see it on the right there in the oval that's orange. And the teacher goes over and kinds of checks whenever the student is using the target language. Obviously, she doesn't do it right after they do, or they'll figure out who it is. But the idea is they don't know who it is, so they want to make sure they're using the target language. Another way to encourage target language use is what we call the expression of the day. So there is a communicative expression, usually some sort of conversational gambit or communicative filler, like, really? No way. Me too, right? So those kind of phrases that help students continue conversations. And anytime a student uses that expression of the day in context, so they're not just yelling out, me too, me too, me, right? But when it makes sense in the context of what's happening, you're recognizing them for using the expression of the day. Another thing teachers do is they have a US flag on one side of a board, and they have the target language country flag. And for those of you who have a language that has multiple countries, you get to pick. Anytime the target language country flag is showing, you must be in the target language. When I do flip it over and the US flag is showing, those are the rare times I'm going to allow you to ask me questions in English. And so you're controlling when English is being used and when the target language being used. And then finally, during COVID, lots and lots of people were doing mystery Skype guests, where students got so excited because they got to use their target language with a person in another place. and they got to try to figure out who that person is. And so it could be someone related to you. It could be another teacher in another country. It could be anything. But that, again, the interaction with a native speaker, especially if it's someone they have to try and guess whether they're related to you or how you know them, is a great way to get kids to use target language. If you're not familiar with them, you should try it. Check out the Happy World Foundation, and I'm going to write it down right now, and I'll add it to the links page afterwards. Happy World Foundation will pair you up with a native speaker in another country who is willing to meet with your students and interact with them. You plan ahead with them and everything. And so it can be like if you're doing art, you can have an artist, or if you're doing, and so it's really cool because their whole foundation is they match up speakers of other languages with students. And then another way for students to feel accountable for using the target language in class is using something called the talk score. And this is from Shrum and Glissen's book, where it spells out talk. So they are participating in the target language. They're accurate, but be careful here. Accuracy does not mean no errors. It means they're comprehensible, right? They're comprehensible. They actively listen to what their partner or group members are saying or their classmates, and they react appropriately and respectfully, like, oh, good job, or whatever. And they're kind to their group members. And so you see there's just a little checklist where a student might self-assess their talk score that day, right? And the idea is for them to feel accountable for using the target language. So in your Google Drive folder, I put 2 self-assessments that come from TEL. The telproject.org is a great place to go. And again, write myself a note to make sure that I have that on your list. And you'll see there's a self-assessment for teacher language use and a self-assessment for student language use. Now, if you're not familiar with TEL was put together by several leaders in our profession years ago, when all the districts were rolling out the evaluation systems for teachers. So many districts were using Danielson, some were using Marzano, like to evaluate teachers. And so what these folks did is they created a framework that's all about language instruction. So it's very specific to us, not just generally, like generic things teachers are doing. And so they have them divided into domains, just like you would in any other evaluation system. So it's not just target language use on there. There's also ones on performance and feedback and your environment and things like that you can download. Now, the only caveat I have for you is when we are doing self-assessments, please don't make everything on the self-assessment your goal. You want to narrow it down to the thing that is going to give you the most impact. So anytime we're trying a new strategy or we're setting a goal for ourselves, we want to keep in mind 2 things, and I call them the litmus test. How will it impact student engagement? And how will it impact student learning? So if I'm implementing a strategy and it didn't engage kids very much, and I didn't get a result out of it I wanted for communicative, tasks and things like that in my classroom, I'm going to probably throw that strategy out. Same with when I'm deciding which of these things on these self-assessments I might like to make a goal. Make sure it's something you're choosing because you're paying attention to the impact it might have on your students' engagement, student learning. So I encourage you to go into our Google Drive folder. You can download those are PDFs. And just spend some time before school starts to just think about how much you're using target language, how much students are using the target language. Pay attention to teacher talk versus student talk, right? And so we want to make sure that we're maximizing the time that we have them with us, because we get to have students back in person live with us. And so we want to maximize that time with as much target language happening as possible. Okay, and our final little section for today is about the communicative modes. How are we going to advance kids in their proficiency? We're going to do that by making sure they get practice in all the communicative modes. And so, as I showed you earlier in our World Readiness Standards for Learning Languages, if you look at the goal called communication, There's interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. So that's what we're referring to when we say the modes. Interpersonal is speaking and writing, and it is spontaneous. So it's me writing a text message to somebody, me writing an email to somebody, me having a conversation in real time with someone else. That's an area that lots of us struggled with during COVID because it was really hard to set up interpersonal exchanges with us being online on Zoom and Google Meet, and some people weren't allowed to use breakout rooms and all of this craziness. And so hopefully we can get back to doing more interpersonal when we're back in our face-to-face classrooms. Interpretive mode, that's when I listen, view, or read. So I'm taking in information by listening to it, by reading it, or viewing it. And then I need to do something with it. Now, this is important because you can't tell if I understood what I listened to, read, or viewed unless I do something with it. That's why the integration of modes is important. So what we mean by that is, after I listen to, view, or read something, am I now talking to my friend about it? So now I just went from an interpretive activity to interpersonal activity. So now with my friend, we shared what we learned from that interpretive piece. And now I have to go take that information and create a presentational writing or speaking. Those of you who are familiar with the integrated performance assessments, that's exactly how they're set up, right? I look at something, I listen to something or read something, then I talk to somebody else about it, and then I create a presentational product. That's exactly how AP exams are set up as well. So when I'm talking about interpersonal, I'm talking about students being able to have a conversation with each other. So I know many of my friends who are teachers through COVID were saying they miss turn and talk. You use turn and talk all the time, but how are you supposed to turn and talk to an empty box beside you, right? And so getting back to that, conversations and dialogues, inside-outside circles, information gap activities, surveys, interviews. Human bingo is like find somebody who. So they're wandering around the class asking each other, do you like chicken? Do you like basketball? Do you like, right? And so they're finding out from each other. And so I want to show you two examples here. On the left is a infographic in Spanish that's about food that humans eat that you also can give your dog. And notice how this is actually for a food unit. This is an authentic text from the target culture. And all I did is I covered up two sections of it on one version, and I covered up two sections on the other, and magically, I have an information gap activity. So notice how this now has a real world connection. It is a infographic that comes from the target culture, and it's talking about a true topic, what you can give your dog. You know, we're not supposed to give our dog chocolate like that, right? On the right-hand side, take a look at that. Example of an inside-outside circles interpersonal activity. So we don't want kids going around an inside-outside circle asking the same questions over and over again, because then I just memorize my answer and I just keep repeating it. So I want to give students different things to interact with as they get a new partner. So take a look on the left. This would be in the target language. What is your favorite? And then I've got a bunch of pictures, music, film, books, board games, food. Then notice on the back of the card, I have some scaffolds and supports for the students. So I have some sentence framing. What is your favorite blank? My favorite blank is blank. My friend likes blank too. My mom, my sister, my brother, me too, not me, I agree. So that they can do more than just ask each other the question and not do anything else, we want to give them help with continuing the conversation, because that's how they'll learn how to do spontaneous interactions. And then you'll notice at the bottom of the back is a little chart. That chart is where I have to record some of the things I heard my friends say. Because if you don't make me accountable, and of my 27 years in the classroom, 21 were in middle school, and if I didn't make them accountable, they would not do it. And so I had to make sure they wrote down 4 or 5 things they heard different people say. And then when we come back out of that activity, we're now going to share something you found out about your friends, right? And so that way they're taking what they learned from that activity, and now they're sharing it in another way with the class. Interpretive communication is listening, viewing, and reading, right? So it's one way. I'm not talking to the person who created it. I'm just taking it in and I'm trying to discover some sort of new information from it. I love, love, love interpretive mode. I've been doing tons and tons of work around authentic resources, because we know that interaction with authentic resources is really good for our Generation Z learners. They want real world things, right? And so this is just the mishmash here of memes and photos and fine art and quotes and comic strips and schedules and movie trailers. That's the Lego movie trailer there. A poem, a tweet, right? There are so many different types of authentic resources we should be showing students. We should not always default to an article, for example, something that's heavy on text, because I want to start students at the very beginning, at the novice level, interacting with text that they can interact with. So I want to find more simplified text with lower text on it, and then slowly work them up to the more difficult things, right? And we know that the mantra we use with authentic resources is adapt the task, not the text. So I don't want to mess with the text. The minute I change the text in any way, I've inauthenticated it. So what I want to do instead is change what I'm having students do with it. How do I know what they can do with it? I go back to my can-do statements and I look at the interpretive mode under their category where their proficiency is. What can I ask a student at that level to do with text? And then finally, we do tons of presentational mode in our classrooms. We do playing games and having them work together on a product, or acting out things, or brainstorming together, or engaging in cooperative learning structures. There's so many different ways we do presentation. I think lots of us feel really comfortable with presentational. I think it's more the interpersonal that we need to do more of in our classrooms, because although students can do highly structured activities, they're not able to talk spontaneously to one another. So I challenge you to put as much of that into your lessons in the coming school year as you can. So for this last little part, and we're doing pretty good, I'm going to let you go to my website. You're going to go to my website to the page called Communicative Modes. Okay, Communicative Modes, and I'll ask my moderators to help out by putting that in the chat. And your goal in the next 2 or 3 minutes is to find a strategy that is new to you to support students' communication in the interpersonal and presentational modes, and also to support their interpretive. Because I'm giving you such little time, I want you to choose which mode you want to look at and find something new to you. So if you already do that, skip it and move to another thing. You will see that some of these are written in black and they say see below, and then some are written in blue. The blue ones are connected directly to their source. The ones in black print, if you scroll down, are little cards I've created that have different strategies on them. So I'm going to go there now with you. So you're going to grandforlang.com, click on Communicative Modes. And now you're going to scroll down till you see Skills Focused Activities. Your goal in the next couple minutes is to find a strategy that is brand new to you, that looks interesting to use with your students. And remember what the litmus test is, that will impact their engagement and impact their learning, right? So you'll see as you scroll down, here are all the cards below. So those are the ones that are in black print. They're easier to look at, by the way, than the link, so you might want to look at those only. So I want you to take a couple minutes, and my goal in this time is for you to walk away today with a new interpersonal, interpretive, or presentational instructional strategy to use in your classroom. So I'm going to stop talking for a couple minutes. about 30 seconds more. Okay, what I'd love for you to do at this point is, will you please put the name of your new strategy in the chat? So I'd love for you to tell me, what new idea did you get? See it, say it, Angelica. Awesome. Ruth already shared picture prompts, table texting, texting story, spunky, password jigsaw, 3-step interview, fan and pick. What's in the bag? Ball of yarn, taboo. Now, why did I have you do that activity? Because now I know you know how to go back to this. So I want you to see this page as a page you can go back to and find strategies, because I'm always adding to them. So make sure you, if you're saying, oh, I need a new presentational strategy, let me go to Leslie's website, go on our communicative modes page, and boom, they're going to be there for you. Okay, awesome. We did really well. We have just 1 minute left. And so we're going to do our final reflection. So after we spent this speedy time together, what I'd love to know, Tian, walk and talk, that's one of my favorites as well. Okay, so I want you to select one sentence starter and finish off the sentence. So if you were to summarize your learning today, reflect on your time with me today, I'd like you to start it with I feel, I wish, I think, I need, I hope, I want. So one thing I already saw is I need some more time to look through all of these resources. So that is legitimate, right? That's a legitimate reflection. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat as our final thing. I want to explore more of the website. Okay, awesome. Need to visit Leslie's website more. I feel prepared for the next year, Angelica. That makes me feel so happy. I need to plan this semester. I think I'm better prepared. I hope you do a session like this. I feel hopeful that I have strategies. Yay. I feel affirmed. That's awesome. I need to prepare for the coming semester. Thank you, Miriam. I wish for more workshops like this. And oh, you all are so sweet. I didn't mean it to be a Leslie Love Fest. Okay, so I am going to hand it back over to my moderators. Thank you all so much for spending time with me today.
So excellent as always, Leslie, magnificent. And that's so nice that many teachers have learned, taking into consideration your ideas, your sources and everything. We really appreciate your sharing and your expertise once again. So thank you. We might have opportunity, because I could see some questions, maybe 1 or 2 questions, Charmaine, Jason.
Those questions have been answered by the other teachers. I think we just need a time to digest Leslie's information. There's tons of information, which is really helpful to start a school year. Thank you, Leslie. There's a lot of.
I have one question for Leslie. Thank you for the sharing. There's one teacher, she's wondering about the activities. You mentioned about the human bingo and the mysterious scape guess and the other activities you list on the communicative modes. So she just wondering if we can share some clear introduction about the activities. Even she sent me the private message, see if I can share that. But I said, oh, please contact Leslie. So could we get some more details about how about all these activities for communication?
Yep. So I think the purpose is I try to put them in categories for you so that you can go there and look for ones that work for you. And I have to tell you that when I go to conferences and I hear about a new strategy, I usually make a version of that strategy that works for me. So I think what everyone should do is take a look at what it says and how it's described, and then take it and make it yours. Make it work for your particular setting. And so don't let it hold you in terms of, I can't do it exactly like that. I want you to see it as, oh, that inspires me to do this.
So you mean we can find it on your from your website, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
thank you so much.